This is just first figuring out the tempo. Reggaeton, basically, it could be from, a lot of different ways. You can have like a really slow tempo reggaeton, but you can also have a fast one. So best way to go through it for me is just going into the middle section. So I'll go like at 92 BPM, which is something that's, relatively in between. And, along the way, we can probably, choose to like speed it up, like slow it down a little bit. But it's a good, starting point. So first of all, let's just go over here and just like turn this down until like a 92. And I think this is, a good idea for you guys to start off. And, for me, my process, it's just finding the right sound. It's something very, important that I encourage everybody, at home to, really have in mind that, finding the right sound can make a huge difference in, in a beat and, whatever you want to achieve on the track. Because, you can maybe have a great melody, but the sound is, the quality isn't there. It's not big enough. It doesn't cover as much space. So you need to like keep adding and stacking sounds, and it would probably, mess a little bit with the mix at the end. So, that's something that I would really prioritize, is getting the right sound. And it will take a while. Sometimes you get it like super fast, but it's worth it. So let's start like going through some plugins. And I've been working with this one, Anna 2 from Slate Digital, Sonic Academy. I think it's a good synthesizer, has a little bit of everything. And so, I want to try and find ideally some keys and get a main melody from it. I think that's a perfect starting point to just figure out where your track is going to. So let's just scroll through sounds and find the right one. Not sure about this one. Sounds too much like an organ. It's not what we're looking for. Okay, this is more like a, yeah. Okay, so I'm pretty comfortable with this one. So let's find a melody. I think finding the right melody, right chord progression, will really guide us to see, where we need to like go to. So I'll start like just playing around some melody ideas. Like this arpeggio type, So let's start like playing around and recording and see if this works. So I think we have something here. So now let's just like get the right, take on it, quantize it, and, start building from there. So I think the last half was the more polished one. So let's just like come over here and quantize, which I would just like select everything. Then Command U will be the have everything quantized, and see if this sounds a little bit better. Let's take this click off. got something there. So from here, since it's kind of like, you know, an arpeggio, I want to try and find like, you know, the right chords underneath it. So let's say when we get to a point where we want to have something a little bit more stripped down, not as busy as this, you know, arpeggio, we can have like a different, you know, pattern. Could probably work for a verse, you know, an intro. So I'm gonna duplicate this plugin and use the same sound, but just to create the chords of it. So let's start playing around with some chords underneath this cool arpeggio that we already have, and, you know, see if we can keep building on this track. I think it works, but when we play it on a chord, it starts doing a weird sound too. So let's try and tweak this sound a little bit more. So since it starts doing like a weird sound, let's just like find another sound that could probably work together with this arpeggio idea that we have. So let's start scrolling to a little bit more different sounds, and probably we can combine them together. So I think this could work. So let's start recording this too. Let's put the click on and record. So I think we have our chord progression and we have our arpeggio. Sometimes I like quantizing because, you know, I want to get a sense of where everything is and that it sounds, you know, close to like that perfect, you know, on the grid. You know, for this one over here, I'm just gonna quantize the lower like keys of it, so you can have nothing, you know, coming in before, because the lower keys have a little bit of the low end. So, you know, you probably get a little bit of bass, you know, sometimes coming in before the actual bass is coming in. So you want to, you know, be careful with those. But the higher keys, I think, could probably be a little bit more loose, a little bit more imperfect. Let's just quantize these lower keys over here. You know, select them all. And how I mentioned before on Ableton, which is the, you know, software that I use, Command U would be, you know, the fastest way to like do it, you know, right away. And you see everything just goes onto the grid. Will sound exactly where, you know, the line is coming in, and, you know, you had something a little bit more structured and not so loose. So you see over here, these are coming in a little bit early. I like that they're in different starting points, but I would probably move them to the right a little bit so it can start exactly where, you know, where this, you know, lower key starts at, and it's not coming in before. And, you know, I think it gives it a cool sound now when it's coming, you know, after and not before. So let's see how these sound together right now. And I think if it sounds good, we can probably start like playing around with some bass sounds and see which one would be the one to go with this on a reggaeton idea. Let's take the key, the meter over here. So I'm cool with this. We can probably, play around with it a little bit later, but for now I think this is a good, starting point to start building on the track. So, let's move forward. Let's find another, either a plugin. I think, to start reggaeton from the roots, from it starts, it's always normally been done with a sub bass. Here on Ableton, you have the simple ones that I like to use because they have a good quality, a good low end. So I'll go with the operator over here. This will give you a good, sine bass, a sub. You see over here I'm playing, on the higher octaves of it. When I started making music, I used to never have a controller, so sometimes I would have all of these instruments and I'll just go straight to the keyboard because it was the only keyboard that I had when I started. So if you see me going just over here and forgetting about these over here, is a habit that I have. So sometimes when you're just scrolling through ideas, it's cool just to play around over here and find, okay, I like the sound, and now I'll go to the actual keyboard and just play around with the keys. So I think this over here is a good sound, so I'm gonna just go hop over here to the keyboard and start playing around with a bass progression. Let's put the click back on, and start playing around. So I think I have a nice bass for it. As you saw, I start playing around with the higher, octaves of the, of the sound, so I can find where the notes are. I think when you start going down on the keys, some of the notes start, sounding a little bit alike because you have so much bass to it. It could sometimes get confused, and you probably have something that you think is the note, but as you put on the higher keys, you get to see it's not on the right key. So I really encourage you to play around it on the higher ones just to find the right notes, so you don't have a wrong key playing underneath on your bass. And it's something that tend to happen to me when I started. A lot of people that I know producing have the similar problem, and it's because of that. You can get confused because of the sound of a lower bass starts sounding a little bit alike between those keys. So let's just select everything, quantize, and I think we have something good. Over here on reggaeton, you see where you have all these 4 grids. I tend to just use 3 of them, so it doesn't sound as sustained when you add the drums. Sometimes when you leave the bass a little bit too long, it takes a little bit out of the groove. So for me, that's something that I tend to do a lot in my production, is just keep it a little bit before the snare comes in, so you have a little bit of groove and it's not so stiff when it sounds. That's a little detail. It's kind of not crazy important, but it's something that I feel gives a little bit of air and groove to the track. So let's see how everything sounds together right now with the bass. So I think we have a nice progression to start building and seeing what drum groove do we want on this. And reggaeton, if you listen to it, sometimes it could probably sound a little bit of the same, but people that know it or people that, you know, produce it, like, there's details and differences in, you know, certain snares, certain kicks. There's some that are really, you know, iconic that, you know, you put it into the drum, you know, the drum pattern, and you know it's a reggaeton beat. I tend to play around sometimes and use the same, you know, the groove, the you know, the vibe that reggaeton has, which is, you know, just the kick and snare, and, you know, if you had you know, some samples from hip hop snare, like a hip hop kick or dance, you know, type of, you know, kick, it would give it a completely different, you know, sound. People won't even probably say it's a reggaeton beat because it doesn't have those, you know, iconic and, you know, straight from the roots, you know, samples. So let's just go to the ones that I know are really reggaeton, that, you know, are the ones that I started using when I started creating reggaeton music, which I got from the Looney Tunes, which, you know, were the producers that, you know, signed me, who are like my greatest, you know, idols. And, you know, just to have the sounds that they were actually using is something cool to have. And you can find it everywhere right now. Like, even I have some stuff out there, so, you know, it's easier to find than when I started. So let's just go through it and start finding snares. Let's start like finding the right snare that goes with this, you know, melody and progression that we have. So let's just write over here, snare. You see a couple of them pop up. So I'm gonna start like scrolling through snares and see which one sounds cool, and then combine it with a kick. I think I like this snare over here. Gold snare is a really, you know, signature one. So let's just start playing around with this one. I'm gonna open up a new MIDI track. Command-Shift-T is the fastest way to get to it. So let's just throw the sample over here. Just mess around with it. Sometimes like you tend to like listening to like how it is on the sample library that you have, but you can play around with it and just like go on a, you know, lower key and have a different sound. It's like going in the keyboard over here. And sometimes like it will sound perfect exactly how you had it, and sometimes like it will sound better just on a lower key or a higher one. So, you know, it just depends on your sound, what you're looking for. So, you know, music is amazing because it has no rules. You can just play around with it exactly how you want it and probably create something that's iconic, you know, and signature for you. So let's just start playing around with this snare over here and, you know, start building up these drums. These we really have to quantize it right now because it starts like getting all messy. This is what's gonna drive the song. It's what's gonna give it, you know, the right groove. So let's just, you know, select everything over here. If you see right now, like everything on the MIDI, you know, track, there's a division over here. So sometimes what you want to do is select everything and Command J. It just consolidates it and, you know, makes it just one. And so you don't have like when you open it up, it's not like all divided and you know, you gotta go into different sections. It's just a complete pattern. So let's just do as we did before. It's just select everything, Command U, quantize it. So I see we're missing one snare over here. So let's just like copy, Command C, and paste Command V. And let's see how this sounds right now. See if everything is in place. I knew it, there's one missing over here, going in the wrong spot, so let's move it back. So from me listening to it right now, I tend to like start mixing as I'm creating. So I'm listening that it doesn't really have that much of a high frequency on it. So let's just, you know, go over here and go to an EQ and just find a simple EQ, EQ8 over here. And let's just add some higher frequency to it so it's not as mixed and not noticeable enough with the rest of the sounds. So let's see how it starts sounding with, you know, higher frequency on the snare. Yeah, so now it has, you know, a little bit more brightness, you know, it's more noticeable. So I think that works better for what we have on this track. So, you know, let's find a kick. I think that's, you know, the driving part and the driving force of, you know, a reggaeton track. The kick is always, you know, on the floor. It really, you know, it tends to have, you know, a little bit of low end on it. So, you know, you mix that with the bass, and, you know, it really gives it that punch and that, you know, that groove that makes people, you know, want to dance when they listen to it. So, you know, let's try to find, you know, the right kick and just play around with this and see if we can find like the one that combines well with, you know, the melodies and the snare. So let's start, you know, exploring some kicks over here. So I think we have a cool one. Maybe we can replace it, maybe we can play around or add something, you know, to layer onto it. But I think this is a good, you know, starting point over here. Just created a MIDI track and let's just throw it into like the MIDI. So as I mentioned, the kick is always like on the floor, so you will listen to it like you will have certain stops and certain, you know, grooves and things that go on the progression of the song, but standard reggaeton will always have the kick just going on the floor all the time, and, you know, it gives it that signature sound and signature groove that it always has. So let's just put this kick over here and see, you know, how everything will sound, you know, completely together. Now you see it sounds all over the place. So same as we did with the snare, select all, let's consolidate, everything is on one same track, and now we just select all again, Command U, and we quantize. So I think now that we have, you know, snare and, you know, and kick, is let's start leveling and seeing, you know, what sounds better, what gives it, you know, that energy. If we need to, you know, equalize, you know, some of like the elements on it. But for me personally, when I listen to a reggaeton and when the drums come in, it tends to like feel like a feeling of explosion, like something just came in. Like it can't be like too soft, it can't be, you know, too behind some of the elements of the melodic or, you know, elements or the sub bass. it really needs to give it, you know, that punch. So that's something that I tend to like play around with. It's like if I need to like some extra, you know, attack into the kick. So that's something that I for sure like will be doing over here, so we can start like, you know, playing around and seeing how that sounds. So let's see how everything sounds together and start playing around with getting the right levels to it. So right now it sounds a little bit flat, so let's start playing around with this kick and start like raising the volume over here and adding some EQ to it also. So I think now it's better levels to it. I really like hearing the kick really present on you know, on the songs when I'm working on a reggaeton track. So that's something that's like, in terms of my style and the things that I look for on a reggaeton, is something that I really am specific about, and I listen to it on different producers that I know and songs that I grew up listening to. So I think it's something that a lot of people would agree on with me, that, you know, the kick needs to like feel powerful when the song comes in. So it's something good, you know, to have in mind. So let's EQ it a little bit. I think it also needs brightness, so let's start adding some brightness onto this, you know, kick, and maybe a little bit of a touch of on the low end too. That would be, you know, the bottom side, the left side of the EQ over here. They sound good. It's now okay going into like the mind of like a mixing engineer and seeing, you know, what it needs to sound like proper. And, you know, me, I like to start, as I mentioned, mixing while I'm producing. So I just want to add some attack onto like these two elements, which is the kick and the snare. And one plugin that I tend to use is one that I like over here. Plugins that knock is the one that makes it, and the plugin is called Knock. It also has a lot of different elements, which I will open right now over here so you can see. It can saturate the sound a little bit more, so it can sound a little bit more gritty. Same thing with the clip over here. It just elevates and adds certain textures and elements to a sound that could really, you know, bring it to life, or bring it, you know, to the front of you know, of the song. And, you know, every sound will sound different. Some of them will sound amazing with it. Some will sound, you know, weird or not as good. So, you know, it's just playing around. I really like to experiment with what I'm doing as I'm working on it. So for sure, as I mentioned, I really want to add some punch to it. So let's go with that and start seeing how that's supposed to sound. So you see, now it has a little bit more of a punch and an attack to it. When you listen to it, it's not as, you know, laid back. Let's add the same one, which I would just like copy and paste it onto the snare, and see how those two sound now with this plugin and adding that attack to it. I think it sounds a lot better. Now I can really, you know, feel the drums when I listen to it. I think it can maybe have some element of ambience, so I will try finding over here a vocal sample, vocal chop or something that could, you know, add a little bit of, you know, maybe a higher, you know, note or a higher octave.